The doctor's words echoed in the sterile examination room, like a death sentence. Your A1C is 11, too. David, your pancreas is barely functioning. At this rate, you're looking at serious complications within 5 years. I stared at the blood test results, watching my world crumble on a single sheet of paper. Type 2 diabetes. Severe. The needle on my glucose meter had become my new executioner, and everyone around me treated me like I was already planning my funeral. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What they didn't realize was that while half of me might be fighting a losing battle with my body, the other half was about to wage a war they never saw coming. A war for everything they held dear, everything they thought was safely theirs, while I slowly faded away. They counted me out too early, and that mistake would cost them everything. 6 months before that devastating diagnosis, life in Riverside, Oregon felt predictable and secure. I was David Chen, co-founder of TechFlow Solutions, living what most people would consider the American dream. Our company had grown from a 2-person startup in my garage to a thriving IT consulting firm with 23 employees and a downtown office building that I partly owned. My wife Rebecca worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, pulling in her own substantial salary. We had 2 kids, Tyler and Sophie, who attended good schools and played on competitive sports teams. Our 4-bedroom house in Maple Ridge sat on a quiet street, lined with maple trees, complete with a 2-car garage and a backyard perfect for weekend barbecue. Everything seemed stable, organized, successful. I thought I had built something solid, something that reflected 15 years of grinding through 18-hour days, learning code languages, debugging systems at 3 in the morning, and slowly building a client base that trusted us with their most critical technology needs. Marcus Thompson, my business partner since the beginning, handled the sales and client relationships while I focused on the technical side and operations. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I believe. The warning signs had been creeping up for months, but I dismissed them as the natural consequences of a demanding lifestyle. Constant thirst that I attributed to the dry Oregon air and too much coffee. Frequent trips to the bathroom during long client meetings that I blamed on my enlarged prostate. Blurred vision that I convinced myself meant I needed new glasses. Persistent fatigue that seemed reasonable for someone managing a growing business while helping coach Tyler's basketball team and driving Sophie to her violin lessons. Rebecca noticed the changes before I did, but her observations came wrapped in irritation rather than concern. "David, you're drinking water like a fish again," she would say, rolling her eyes when I refilled my bottle for the 4th time during dinner. "And you're falling asleep during Tyler's games. People are starting to notice." Her tone suggested my behavior was more of a social embarrassment than a health issue, something that reflected poorly on our family's image at school events and business networking functions. Marcus expressed his concerns differently, with the blunt pragmatism that had made him effective in sales, but occasionally ruthless in personal relationships. "You look like hell, Chan," he told me during our weekly partner meeting in early spring. "Whatever's going on with you, fix it. We've got the Morrison Industries proposal due next month, and I need you sharp. You can't afford to be off your game right now." His words carried an undertone I didn't fully grasp at the time, a subtle shift that suggested he was already calculating scenarios where I might become a liability rather than an asset. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late April when I collapsed during a client presentation. We were demonstrating our new inventory management system to a potential customer worth 6 figures annually, and I was walking them through the technical specifications when the room started spinning. My vision tunneled, my hands began shaking uncontrollably, and I had to grip the conference table to keep from falling over. The presentation ended abruptly with me apologizing, and Marcus smoothly taking over while I stumbled to the bathroom, my face burning with embarrassment and confusion. Dr. Williams had been our family physician for 8 years, and she delivered the diagnosis with the kind of clinical detachment that doctors develop to protect themselves from the weight of constantly bearing bad news. "Your glucose levels are dangerously high, Dave. We're looking at type 2 diabetes, and it's already progressed significantly. Your pancreas is struggling to produce insulin, and your body isn't processing what little it makes effectively. This isn't something we can reverse with lifestyle changes alone. You're going to need medication, probably insulin injections, and major changes to every aspect of how you live. She continued explaining the implications with charts and statistics that felt surreal, like she was describing someone else's life. Potential kidney damage, nerve deterioration, vision problems, cardiovascular complications, shortened life expectancy. The medical terms blended together into a symphony of decline and limitation. Many patients find this diagnosis overwhelming initially, she said, her voice softening slightly. It's normal to feel like your body has betrayed you, but with proper management, people with diabetes can live full, productive lives. Full and productive. The words felt hollow when I considered what management actually meant. Daily blood sugar monitoring, multiple medications, insulin injections, rigid meal planning, constant vigilance about every bite of food, every moment of stress, every minor illness that could throw my glucose levels into dangerous territory. It meant becoming a person whose life revolved around a disease, someone who needed permission from his pancreas to eat a piece of birthday cake, or stay up late finishing a project proposal. The drive home from Dr. Williams's office felt like a funeral procession. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the prescription papers and educational pamphlets she had given me, trying to process how fundamentally everything had just changed. The man who had walked into that office an hour earlier was someone who took his body for granted, who assumed he would have decades to build his business, watch his children grow up, and enjoy the fruits of his labor. The man sitting in the parking lot was chronically ill, potentially disabled, facing a future measured in blood sugar readings and medication schedule. When I finally made it home, Rebecca was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her movements efficient and precise as she chopped vegetables for what I realized would probably be my last normal meal for a long time. Tyler was at basketball practice, and Sophie was upstairs practicing violin, filling the house with the tentative notes of a piece she was learning for her spring recital. Everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but I felt like an alien observing someone else's life through a window. How did it go? Rebecca asked without looking up from her cutting board. Her tone was casual, suggesting she expected routine news about needing more exercise or cutting back on caffeine. I handed her the diagnosis papers and watched her expression shift from mild curiosity to shock to something that looked disturbingly like calculation. She read through the information twice before setting it down and turning to face me fully. Diabetes, she said, as if testing how the word felt. Type 2. So this is permanent. I nodded, and she sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her hands folded in front of her like she was preparing for a business meeting. What does this mean for us? For the business, for the kids' activities and college plans? Her questions revealed priorities I hadn't expected. Not how are you feeling, or what can I do to help, but immediate concerns about how my diagnosis would impact our lifestyle, our financial stability, our carefully constructed plans for the future. I realized that Rebecca was already categorizing me as someone who might not be able to maintain his share of our dual-income household, someone whose health insurance premiums would increase, whose productivity might decline, whose presence at social events might become complicated by dietary restrictions and medical needs. I don't know yet, I admitted. Dr. Williams said it's manageable, but it's going to require significant changes. Diet, exercise, medication, regular monitoring. I'll need to learn how to give myself insulin injections and test my blood sugar multiple times a day. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I was describing someone else's medical condition rather than my own reality. Rebecca nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful in a way that made me uncomfortable. We'll need to talk to Marcus about how this affects your work responsibilities, and I should probably research what this means for our health insurance and life insurance policy. There might be coverage issues or premium increases we need to prepare for. Her immediate shift into logistics and risk management felt practical but cold, as if she was already distancing herself from the emotional reality of my diagnosis to focus on protecting her own interests. That evening, Tyler came home from basketball practice energized and talkative, describing a particularly good scrimmage and sharing gossip about teammates and coaches. I watched him move around the kitchen with the unconscious physical confidence of a healthy 16-year-old, grabbing snacks and drinks without considering the impact on his blood sugar or calculating carbohydrate content. Sophie practiced her violin with focused determination, occasionally playing sections repeatedly until she achieved the sound she wanted. Both of my children inhabited their bodies easily, trusting that their pancreases and kidneys and cardiovascular systems would simply function correctly without conscious oversight. I found myself studying their faces, wondering how they would react when they learned their father had become someone who might not be able to coach Tyler's summer basketball league, or attend Sophie's evening recitals if his blood sugar was unstable. Would they begin to see me as fragile, unreliable, diminished? Would they start making contingency plans for activities and events, assuming I might not be available or capable? Rebecca announced my diagnosis to the children during dinner with the same matter-of-fact tone she used for discussing schedule changes or household logistics. "Your father has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes," she explained while passing the salad bowl. "It's a condition that affects how his body processes sugar. He'll need to make some changes to his diet and take medication, but it's something many people manage successfully." She made it sound like a minor inconvenience, like needing reading glasses or developing lactose intolerance. Tyler's response was immediate and practical. "So you can't eat dessert anymore?" Sophie asked if diabetes was contagious, and when I assured her it wasn't, she seemed to lose interest and returned to discussing her upcoming violin recital. Their reactions felt appropriately childlike, focused on immediate and concrete impacts rather than long-term implications. But I noticed something in their expressions, a subtle shift in how they looked at me, as if they were already beginning to categorize me differently. The next morning, I called Marcus to schedule a meeting about my diagnosis and its potential impact on our business operations. His response was carefully neutral, professionally supportive in a way that felt rehearsed. "Of course, David. Health comes first. Let's sit down and figure out how to adjust things, so you can focus on taking care of yourself." But there was something in his tone, a subtle note of speculation that made me wonder what conversations he might already be having with our employees, our clients, or even with Rebecca about the future stability of TechFlow Solutions. Marcus and I met at our office the following afternoon, in the conference room where I had collapsed just days earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat across from him at the same table where I had demonstrated what might have been my last major client presentation as a fully capable business partner. He had prepared notes, which surprised me since our partner meetings typically involved casual discussion rather than formal agendas. "I've been thinking about how to restructure some of your responsibilities," he began, pulling out a legal pad covered with handwritten bullet points. "Obviously, you're going to need more flexibility for medical appointments, and you might not be able to handle the same level of stress you've been carrying. I'm thinking we should transition some of your client relationships to other team members, maybe reduce your involvement in the day-to-day crisis management situations that require long hours or unpredictable schedules." His suggestions sounded reasonable on the surface, but I recognized the underlying implication. He was essentially proposing to remove me from the most critical and visible aspects of our business operations, relegating me to a more administrative role that would reduce my value and influence within the company we had built together. "Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not disabled. Dr. Williams said this condition is manageable with proper care. I don't think we need to make dramatic changes immediately." "Look, David," he said, leaning forward with the expression he typically reserved for difficult client negotiation. "I'm not trying to push you out, but we have to be realistic. This disease is progressive. What you can handle today might not be what you can handle in 6 months or 2 years." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We need to start preparing for scenarios where you might not be able to maintain your current level of involvement. It's not personal. It's business continuity planning. His words hit me like physical blows. Disease. Progressive. Business continuity planning. He was already writing me off, already imagining TechFlow Solutions without me as an active partner. I realized that Marcus had been waiting for something like this. Some indication that I might become a liability rather than an asset. And my diabetes diagnosis had given him the justification he needed to begin marginalizing my role in the company we had built from nothing. "I think you're getting ahead of yourself," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been managing the technical operations of this company for 15 years. I know our systems, our clients, our employees better than anyone. One medical diagnosis doesn't erase that knowledge or experience." But even as I spoke, I could see in his expression that he had already made his decision. My health crisis had become his opportunity. The meeting ended with Marcus suggesting we table the discussion for a few weeks while I adjusted to my treatment regimen. But I left the office knowing that he was already beginning to position himself as the sole driving force behind TechFlow Solutions. I drove home through familiar neighborhoods that suddenly felt foreign, as if my diagnosis had transported me to a parallel universe where everything looked the same but operated according to different rules. "We've been looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the integration challenges for the new inventory system." Her greeting confirmed what I had suspected. Our clients valued my technical expertise and personal involvement in their projects. Marcus's attempts to position himself as the primary point of contact had not been as successful as he had claimed. "I'm looking forward to discussing the technical details with you," I replied, making eye contact with Marcus as I spoke. "I've been developing some innovative solutions specifically for your manufacturing environment that I think will exceed your expectations." Marcus forced a smile and nodded, but I could see him struggling to figure out how to maintain control of a presentation that was clearly beyond his technical expertise. The presentation itself became a subtle power struggle played out in front of our client. Marcus attempted to lead the discussion, but every significant technical question was directed to me. Every detailed specification required my explanation, and every innovative solution came from my creative work. I answered each question thoroughly and professionally, demonstrating not just my technical competence, but my deep understanding of Pacific Northwest's specific needs and challenges. Midway through the presentation, Janet asked about timeline estimates for the project implementation. Marcus began to respond with the aggressive schedule he had developed, cutting my original estimates by 30% to appear more competitive. I interrupted him smoothly, pulling out my detailed project timeline that accounted for thorough testing, employee training, and system integration challenges. "I want to make sure we're setting realistic expectations," I said, handing Janet my comprehensive timeline. "While we're eager to complete this project efficiently, I believe it's more important to deliver a solution that works perfectly from day one, rather than rushing implementation and creating problems that require expensive fixes later." My approach directly contradicted Marcus's sales strategy, but it reflected the careful, thorough methodology that had built our reputation with long-term clients. Janet reviewed my timeline carefully, comparing it with the specifications Marcus had provided. "This is exactly the kind of detailed planning we were hoping for," she said, looking directly at me. "We've had bad experiences with vendors who promise unrealistic timelines and then deliver substandard results. Your approach gives us confidence that this project will be handled properly." The meeting concluded with Pacific Northwest requesting a formal proposal based on my technical specifications and timeline estimates, effectively rejecting Marcus's attempts to accelerate the process or simplify the technical requirement. As our clients left, Janet shook my hand again and made a comment that felt like vindication. "David, it's reassuring to know that you'll be personally involved in this project. Your expertise and attention to detail are exactly what we need for something this complex." After the clients left, Marcus and I sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by presentation materials and the lingering tension of our professional conflict. Marcus broke the silence first, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You undermined me in front of our biggest potential client. They specifically requested assurance that project continuity wouldn't be affected by your health problems, and you just demonstrated that you're not willing to step back when necessary." "They requested no such thing," I replied calmly, meeting his gaze direct. "You told them I was stepping back, and they accepted that information because they trusted our professional relationship. But when given the choice between working with you alone or working with the person who actually designed their systems, they made their preference clear." Marcus's jaw tightened as he realized that his strategy to marginalize me had backfired spectacularly. "Look, David, I'm trying to help you here. You're dealing with a serious medical condition that's going to affect your ability to handle stress and maintain consistent work performance. I'm offering to take on additional responsibilities so you can focus on your health without worrying about letting down our clients. His tone had shifted to the reasonable, concerned voice he used when trying to manipulate clients into accepting unfavorable contract terms. My medical condition is well managed, and it doesn't affect my professional capability. What affects my ability to do my job is having my business partner exclude me from important meetings, make unilateral decisions about my client relationships, and tell people that I'm incapacitated when I'm perfectly capable of handling my responsibility. I stood up and began collecting my presentation materials, maintaining eye contact with Marcus throughout. If you continue trying to push me out of the business we built together, you're going to discover that you need me a lot more than I need you. I own 45% of this company. I designed most of our valuable intellectual property, and our clients trust me to deliver technical solutions that work. You can try to marginalize me, but you can't replace what I bring to this partnership. Marcus's expression shifted from manipulative concern to open hostility. Are you threatening me, David? Because if you think your medical condition gives you some kind of leverage, you're seriously mistaken. I can document plenty of instances where your diabetes has affected your work performance, your reliability, and your decision-making capabilities. If you want to make this adversarial, I'm prepared to protect this company from partners who can't fulfill their obligations. His threat was exactly what I had been expecting, the moment when his reasonable facade would drop and reveal his true intentions. Marcus had been planning this confrontation, building a case for my incompetence that he could use to justify forcing me out of the company. But he had made a critical miscalculation. He assumed that my diagnosis had made me weak and desperate, willing to accept whatever terms he offered to avoid conflict. Document whatever you want, Mark, but remember that I have access to all the same company records you do, plus a few things you might not have considered, like the fact that our most profitable contracts specifically require my personal involvement, or that the software systems generating our highest margins are copyrighted under my name, or that forcing out a business partner because of a medical diagnosis might raise some interesting legal questions about disability discrimination. I left the conference room with Marcus staring after me, his face pale as he began to calculate the true implications of the war he had started. For weeks he had been treating me like a liability to be managed and eventually eliminated. Now he was beginning to understand that I was actually the foundation holding up everything he valued most about our business. Walking back to my office, I felt a surge of energy and clarity that I hadn't experienced since my diagnosis. The constant accommodation, the careful management of everyone else's concerns about my condition, the apologetic acceptance of reduced responsibilities, all of that was finished. Marcus wanted to find out what happened when he tried to take advantage of someone he assumed was weakened by illness. He was about to get a comprehensive education in exactly how dangerous that assumption could be. The weekend after my confrontation with Marcus, I transformed my home office into a war room. Medical journals and glucose monitoring supplies shared desk space with corporate documents, client contracts, and legal research printout. Rebecca found me there Saturday morning, surrounded by evidence of what she clearly viewed as an unhealthy obsession with business conflicts that I should be avoiding for the sake of my health. David, this is exactly the kind of stress Williams warned you about, she said, surveying the organized chaos of paperwork covering every available surface. Your blood sugar readings have been erratic all week, and now you're spending your weekend working yourself up over office politics. Maybe it's time to seriously consider stepping back from the daily operations at TechFlow. Her suggestion landed like a physical blow, not because it was unexpected, but because it confirmed that even my wife had accepted Marcus's narrative about my diminished capability. Rebecca wasn't supporting my fight to maintain my professional position. She was encouraging me to surrender it voluntarily. These aren't office politics, Rebecca. This is about Marcus systematically trying to steal the company I helped build while using my medical condition as an excuse. If I don't fight back now, I'll lose everything we've worked for. Everything we've worked for? Rebecca's tone sharpened with an edge I recognized from her most difficult client negotiations. David, you have a chronic illness that requires constant management. Fighting with your business partner isn't going to change that reality. Maybe Marcus is right that you need to focus on your health instead of trying to maintain the same level of professional responsibility you had before your diagnosis. Her words revealed a fundamental shift in how she viewed our marriage and our shared future. Rebecca was no longer thinking about us as equal partners building something together. She was calculating how to protect her own interests if my illness made me less capable of contributing to our household income and lifestyle. She had already begun mentally preparing for a future where I was more dependent than productive, more liability than asset. I see, I said quietly, understanding for the first time that Rebecca's concerns about my health were actually concerns about her own financial security. You're worried that fighting to keep my position at TechFlow might jeopardize the steady income and benefits you've been counting on. You'd rather have me accept a reduced role that guarantees some payment than risk losing everything by demanding equal treatment. Rebecca's expression shifted to defensive anger, but she didn't deny my interpretation. I'm being practical, David. We have 2 children, a mortgage, and significant expenses. Your medical costs are going to increase, and if this conflict with Marcus escalates, it could destroy the business entirely. I'm thinking about our family's stability, not just your ego. Her honesty was devastating and clarifying in equal measure. Rebecca viewed my determination to fight for my professional rights as a selfish risk that threatened our family's financial security. She wanted me to accept Marcus's marginalization, quietly, to take whatever reduced role and compensation he offered, because she believed that fighting back would result in total loss rather than restored equality. She had already written off my ability to win this conflict. That afternoon, I drove to Central Valley Gym, a fitness center I had joined the week after my diagnosis on Dr. Williams's recommendation for managing my diabetes through exercise. The gym was populated primarily by people over 40 dealing with various health challenges, and I had initially felt self-conscious about my glucose monitoring equipment and careful attention to hydration and energy level. But that Saturday, I approached my workout with a different mindset entirely. Instead of exercising apologetically, as if my presence in the gym was evidence of my physical inadequacy, I began treating my fitness routine as preparation for battle. Every monitored blood sugar reading, every calculated insulin dose, every measured meal became part of a comprehensive strategy for maintaining optimal performance under stress. If Marcus wanted to characterize my diabetes as a disqualifying weakness, I would demonstrate that proper medical management actually enhanced my capabilities, rather than limiting them. Tricia Williams had emphasized that many successful people managed diabetes without significant lifestyle restrictions, citing examples of professional athletes, business executives, and public figures who maintained demanding careers while controlling their condition through medication and monitoring. But her encouragement had felt like consolation prizes, attempts to help me accept a diminished version of my former life. Now I began researching these examples not for comfort, but for tactical knowledge about how chronic illness could be weaponized into competitive advantage. Professional athletes with diabetes often developed superior body awareness, nutritional discipline, and stress management techniques that gave them edges over competitors who took their health for granted. Business leaders who managed chronic conditions frequently demonstrated organizational skills, attention to detail, and crisis management capabilities that exceeded those of their healthier colleagues. Instead of viewing my diagnosis as a limitation, I began reframing it as intensive training in precisely the kinds of systematic thinking and careful planning that would be essential for outmaneuvering market. Monday morning, I arrived at TechFlow Solutions with a comprehensive strategy for reasserting control over my professional relationships and business operations. My first target was Kevin Park, Marcus's son, whose presence in our office had become a symbol of my marginalization. Kevin was filing client documents when I approached his temporary workstation near the main reception area. "Kevin, I need to make some changes to how we're handling project documentation," I said, keeping my tone friendly but authoritative. "From now on, all technical files should be routed through me for review before they're updated or reorganized. I'm implementing new security protocols to protect our intellectual property and client confidentiality." Kevin looked confused, clearly expecting me to defer to whatever instructions his father had given him, but Mr. Thompson told me to reorganize everything according to the new system he designed. He said it would be more efficient and easier for everyone to understand. The teenager's response confirmed that Marcus had been using his son to implement changes to our business operations without consulting me. I'm sure your father's system has merit, but as co-owner of this company, I need to approve any changes to how we handle sensitive client information. Why don't you focus on general administrative tasks today, and I'll review the filing protocols with your father before we make any permanent changes. Kevin nodded uncertainly, but he began returning files to their original locations, effectively undoing several days of Marcus's unauthorized reorganization. My next target was our relationship with Morrison Industries. The client Marcus had claimed was concerned about project continuity due to my health issues. I called Janet Morrison directly, bypassing Marcus entirely, and requested a private meeting to discuss technical specifications for their inventory management upgrade. Janet agreed immediately, expressing enthusiasm about working directly with me on the technical aspects of their project. I have to be honest, David, Janet said during our meeting at Morrison Industries' downtown office. When Marcus suggested that you might be stepping back from hands-on project management, we were disappointed. Your technical expertise and attention to detail are exactly what we need for something this complex. We've had too many experiences with vendors who promise comprehensive solutions but don't understand the nuances of manufacturing operation. Her feedback confirmed what I had suspected. Marcus's attempts to position himself as the primary point of contact had been met with client resistance rather than acceptance. Morrison Industries wanted my personal involvement in their project, and they were willing to say so explicitly when given the opportunity. I appreciate your confidence in my work, Janet. I want to assure you that my medical condition doesn't affect my ability to deliver the kind of thorough, innovative solutions Morrison Industries expects. In fact, the systematic thinking required to manage diabetes has actually enhanced my approach to complex technical challenges. Janet's expression showed genuine interest rather than polite accommodation. That's fascinating. We've been struggling with systematic approaches to inventory management across multiple facilities. Your experience with comprehensive monitoring and optimization could be exactly what we need. She was treating my diabetes not as a liability to be managed, but as additional expertise that could benefit their business operations. Our conversation evolved into a detailed technical discussion about integration challenges, data flow optimization, and quality control protocols that demonstrated my complete command of both their existing systems and the proposed upgrades. Janet took extensive notes and asked increasingly sophisticated questions that revealed her confidence in my technical judgment. By the end of our meeting, she had requested that I personally oversee all aspects of their project implementation, specifically citing my systematic approach and attention to detail as critical success factors. I'd like to formalize this arrangement in our contract, Janet said as we concluded our meeting. Morrison Industries wants David Chen as the designated project manager and primary technical contact for this implementation. We'll need assurance that you'll be personally involved throughout the entire process. Her request was exactly what I needed to demonstrate that clients valued my expertise regardless of my medical condition. That afternoon, I used my administrative access to review all client communications Marcus had initiated during the past month. What I discovered was a systematic campaign to marginalize my role that went far beyond the examples I had already identified. Marcus had been telling clients that I was transitioning to an advisory role due to health concerns, suggesting that they work with other team members for day-to-day project management, and positioning himself as the stable, reliable point of contact who could ensure continuity despite my medical challenges. More significantly, I found evidence that Marcus had been exploring partnerships with competing firms, ostensibly to expand our service capabilities, but actually to create alternative business relationships that wouldn't depend on my technical expertise. He had initiated preliminary discussions with 3 other IT consulting companies about potential mergers or joint ventures that would give him majority control of the combined entity while reducing my ownership stake and influence. His strategy was more sophisticated and long-term than I had initially realized. Marcus wasn't just trying to marginalize me within our existing partnership, He was planning to restructure the entire business in ways that would eliminate my leverage and force me into a subordinate position. He had been using my diabetes diagnosis as cover for a comprehensive power grab that would leave me financially and professionally dependent on his continued goodwill. But Marcus had made several critical miscalculations that I was now prepared to explore. First, he had underestimated how much our clients valued direct access to my technical expertise, assuming that they would accept his management of our relationships without questioning the change. Second, he had failed to realize that many of our most valuable contracts included specific language requiring my personal involvement in project implementation. Third, he had ignored the legal implications of trying to force out a business partner based on medical status, particularly when that partner's contributions remained essential to business operation. Most importantly, Marcus had assumed that my diabetes made me psychologically as well as physically vulnerable, that my diagnosis would make me risk-averse and eager to avoid conflict. He expected me to accept whatever accommodation he offered rather than fight for equal treatment. His strategy depended on my willingness to be marginalized quietly, to prioritize peace over principles, and to accept diminished status in exchange for continued employment. Wednesday morning, I scheduled individual meetings with our 5 most important clients, ostensibly to provide project updates, but actually to assess their loyalty and gauge their reactions to potential business restructuring. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. I would present comprehensive project status reports that demonstrated my detailed knowledge of their technical requirements, discuss upcoming challenges that required my specific expertise, and casually mention that TechFlow Solutions was evaluating some structural changes that might affect client relationships. The responses were consistently favorable to my continued involvement and consistently skeptical about changes that might reduce my accessibility. Pacific Northwest Manufacturing wanted assurance that I would remain their primary technical contact. Riverside Hospital specifically requested that their electronic health records integration be managed by me personally. Central Oregon Bank expressed concerns about project continuity if I were to step back from active management of their cybersecurity implementation. Each client conversation provided documentation that my role was not just valuable but irreplaceable within our current business model. Marcus could position himself as a capable sales and relationship manager, but he couldn't replicate the technical expertise and client trust that I had developed over 15 years of hands-on problem solving. His plan to marginalize me would inevitably result in client defections and revenue losses that would damage the business he was trying to control. Thursday afternoon, I requested a formal partner meeting with Marcus to discuss our business relationship and the structural changes he had been implementing without my consent. I scheduled the meeting in our main conference room and prepared comprehensive documentation of his unauthorized activities, client communications, and strategic planning that violated our partnership agreement. Marcus arrived for the meeting with his own folder of materials, clearly expecting to present his case for why my reduced involvement was necessary for business stability and growth. The plan involved simultaneous pressure on multiple fronts: client relationships, intellectual property access, legal compliance, and business operations that would make his daily work increasingly difficult and expensive. Friday morning, I implemented the first phase of this offensive strategy by formally revoking Marcus's administrative access to our proprietary software systems. As the copyright holder, I had legal authority to control who could use these applications and under what circumstances. Marcus discovered the change when he attempted to access our customer relationship management system and found himself locked out with a message directing him to contact the system administrator for assistance. "David, what the hell is this?" Marcus demanded, storming into my office with his laptop displaying the access denial message. "I can't get into any of our project management systems, and Jenny at reception says you've changed all the administrative passwords. This is sabotage, and it's interfering with my ability to serve our clients." His angry reaction confirmed that Marcus had never fully understood the legal structure underlying our business operation. He had assumed that co-ownership of TechFlow Solutions gave him equal access to all company assets. But the most valuable systems were actually my personal property that I licensed to the company, under terms I could modify at will. "Marcus, those software systems are my intellectual property. licensed to TechFlow Solutions under agreements that require my approval for user access. Given your recent pattern of making unauthorized changes to business operations, I think it's prudent to formalize the approval process for system modifications and user privileges. My tone was calm and professional, but my message was unmistakably threatening. You can't lock me out of systems I need to do my job. This is extortion, and it's probably illegal interference with business operations. I'm calling our attorney immediately to find out what legal recourse I have against this kind of sabotage. Marcus was practically shouting, his face flushed with anger and panic as he realized that his access to critical business information was now dependent on my cooperation. Feel free to call our attorney, Marcus. While you're at it, you might want to ask about the legal implications of systematically excluding a business partner from decision-making processes, communicating with clients without authorization, and exploring merger opportunities that would violate our partnership agreement. I think you'll find that intellectual property licensing is well within my legal right. The confrontation escalated throughout the morning as Marcus attempted various strategies for regaining system access, while I maintained my position that formal approval processes were necessary to protect our valuable intellectual property. Other employees began noticing the tension, with several people asking about technical difficulties they were experiencing with project management applications. By noon, Marcus's inability to access client information and project data had begun affecting his ability to respond to routine business inquiries and maintain his usual level of client communication. The systems I had developed weren't just convenient tools. They were essential infrastructure that enabled our business operation. Without access to customer histories, project timelines, and technical specifications, Marcus couldn't function effectively as a sales manager or client relationship coordinator. His desperation became apparent when he offered to formally acknowledge my equal partnership status in exchange for restored system access. David, I think we've both made mistakes in how we've handled this situation. I'm willing to discuss a more collaborative approach to business decisions if you'll restore normal access to our management systems. We can't let this conflict interfere with our ability to serve clients and maintain business operations. But Marcus's offer was too little and too late. His willingness to negotiate only after losing access to critical business tools revealed that his previous marginalization of my role had been entirely tactical rather than based on genuine health concern. He had been perfectly comfortable excluding me from important decisions when he believed he held the advantage, but now he wanted collaboration when his own effectiveness was threatened. I appreciate your interest in collaboration, Marcus, but I need to see more substantial changes than just discussion. You've spent months systematically undermining my authority and client relationships while claiming to act in my best interest. Restoring system access requires more than verbal commitments to improved cooperation. My response made it clear that I was no longer willing to accept superficial concessions that could be reversed once he regained operational capability. That afternoon brought the confrontation I had been anticipating since my diagnosis. Rebecca arrived home from work to find me in my office, monitoring my blood sugar levels while reviewing legal documents and strategic planning material. Her expression carried the same mixture of frustration and calculation that had become increasingly familiar over the past weeks. David, Marcus called me at work today. He's concerned that your medical condition is affecting your judgment and your ability to make rational business decisions. He thinks you might be having some kind of psychological reaction to your diabetes diagnosis that's making you paranoid and combative. Rebecca's tone suggested that she found Marcus's explanation plausible and concerning. Her willingness to discuss my mental health with my business partner behind my back was both infuriating and revealing. Rebecca had apparently decided that my determination to fight for equal treatment was evidence of medical instability rather than justified response to systematic marginalization. She was treating my resistance to Marcus's power grab as a symptom that needed management rather than a principled stand that deserved support. Rebecca, Marcus is manipulating you the same way he's been trying to manipulate our clients and employee. He's spent months systematically excluding me from business decisions while claiming health concerns, and now that I'm fighting back effectively, he's trying to convince everyone that my resistance proves I'm mentally unstable. This is a classic strategy for discrediting someone whose position you can't attack directly. But Rebecca's expression suggested that she had already accepted Marcus's narrative about my psychological deterioration. David, you've been obsessed with this conflict for weeks. Your blood sugar readings have been erratic. You're not sleeping properly, and you're spending all your time gathering evidence about Marcus's activities like some kind of private investigator. Maybe he's right, that your medical condition is affecting your decision-making capability. Her words hit me like physical blows, not because they were unexpected, but because they confirmed that my wife had joined my business partner in treating my diabetes as evidence of general incompetence and instability. Rebecca wasn't just worried about my health. She was actively supporting Marcus's campaign to marginalize my professional authority by characterizing my resistance as medical symptoms, rather than rational strategy. So you think I should just accept whatever terms Marcus offers, regardless of how unfair or legally questionable they might be, because fighting back might affect my blood sugar levels? You'd rather have me surrender my professional rights than risk the stress of standing up for myself. My voice was rising despite my efforts to maintain composure, and I could feel my glucose levels spiking in response to the emotional intensity of our confrontation. I think you should prioritize your health over your ego, Dave. This conflict with Marcus isn't worth destroying your physical condition or our family's financial stability. You have a chronic illness that requires careful management, and that means avoiding situations that create unnecessary stress and complications. Rebecca's response revealed that she viewed my determination to maintain equal partnership status as selfish risk-taking that threatened our family's welfare. The argument that followed was the most devastating conversation of our 17-year marriage. Rebecca made it clear that she believed my diabetes diagnosis had fundamentally changed our relationship dynamics, that my medical condition automatically disqualified me from making high-stakes decisions about business conflicts and financial risk. She wanted me to accept Marcus's marginalization quietly, to prioritize medical management over professional equality, and to focus on being a stable patient rather than an equal partner. More significantly, Rebecca revealed that she had been discussing our situation with Marcus regularly, sharing information about my medical condition, my stress levels, and my emotional responses to business conflict. She had apparently accepted his characterization of our partnership dispute as evidence of my psychological instability, and she was actively supporting his efforts to restructure our business relationship, according to what they both viewed as my diminished capability. Rebecca, you've been collaborating with Marcus to undermine my position in my own company, while claiming to be concerned about my health. You're not protecting our family's interests. You're helping him steal assets and relationships that belong to me legally and professionally. This isn't medical accommodation, it's systematic betrayal by the two people I trusted most. Her response was immediate and uncompromising. If you continue this destructive conflict with Marcus, you're going to lose everything we've built together. Your medical condition makes you vulnerable in ways you don't seem to understand, and this obsession with fighting back is going to destroy our business, our marriage, and our family's future. I won't watch you self-destruct because you're too proud to accept reality. That evening, after Rebecca had gone to bed, I sat in my office calculating the true scope of the betrayal I was facing. My business partner had spent months systematically stealing my professional relationships and authority while claiming health concerns. My wife had been actively supporting his campaign while sharing confidential information about my medical condition and psychological state. Even my children had been conditioned to view me as someone whose capabilities were fundamentally diminished by chronic illness. But what Marcus and Rebecca had failed to understand was that their coordinated campaign to marginalize me had actually clarified my position and strengthened my resolve. I was no longer fighting just to maintain my role within our existing business partnership. I was fighting to demonstrate that chronic illness didn't automatically disqualify someone from demanding equal treatment and fair compensation for their contribution. Monday morning would bring the final phase of this conflict, when Marcus would discover that underestimating someone with diabetes had been the most expensive mistake of his professional career. He thought my medical condition was his greatest weapon against me. He was about to learn that it had actually been my greatest source of strategic advantage. Marcus arrived at the office Monday morning to discover that his world had fundamentally shifted overnight. Every major client had received formal notification that I would be transitioning from TechFlow Solutions to establish an independent consulting practice, taking my intellectual property licenses and technical expertise with me. Pacific Northwest Manufacturing, Riverside Hospital, Morrison Industries, and Central Oregon Bank had all responded within hours, requesting immediate meetings to discuss following me to my new venture. The exodus was swift and devastating. By Tuesday afternoon, clients representing 87% of our annual revenue had formally terminated their contracts with TechFlow Solutions, citing concerns about technical continuity and project management capability. Marcus found himself managing a business with virtually no income, extensive overhead costs, and no access to the proprietary software systems that had made our operations efficient and profitable. His desperate phone calls to Rebecca seeking intervention only accelerated the collapse of his position. When she attempted to characterize my actions as vindictive self-destruction caused by diabetic psychological instability, our clients responded with confusion and concern about the competence of our management team. Mitchell from Riverside Hospital was particularly direct. If TechFlow Solutions believes that diabetes affects David's professional judgment, we question their understanding of medical conditions and their fitness to manage healthcare technology projects. Rebecca's realization that her collaboration with Marcus had backfired came too late to prevent the complete dissolution of everything she had been trying to protect. The stable income and financial security she had prioritized over my professional rights disappeared entirely when our client base evaporated. The reduced role and accommodation she had wanted me to accept became meaningless when there was no longer a business substantial enough to provide any role at all. Marcus attempted one final strategy by threatening legal action for breach of partnership agreement and intellectual property theft. His attorney quickly discovered that my licensing arrangements were legally sound, my client relationships were based on personal contracts rather than corporate assets, and my decision to establish independent practice was entirely within my rights as a professional consultant. Moreover, his systematic exclusion of me from business decisions and his pattern of unauthorized communications with clients created potential liability for breach of fiduciary duty that made litigation extremely risky for him. The settlement negotiations were brief and decisive. Marcus agreed to buy out my 45% ownership stake in TechFlow Solutions at fair market value, which had become essentially zero given the loss of our client base and intellectual property access. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue legal action for his violation of our partnership agreement and his misuse of confidential medical information in his campaign to undermine my professional reputation. Within 6 weeks of my diabetes diagnosis, I had transitioned from marginalized partner to independent business owner, with exclusive control over the most valuable client relationships and technical assets we had developed together. Chen Technology Solutions launched with 5 major clients, proprietary software systems, and a reputation for technical excellence that attracted additional business immediately. My systematic approach to diabetes management had become a selling point with healthcare clients who valued comprehensive attention to detail and regulatory compliance. Rebecca's response to this transformation revealed the depth of her miscalculation about my capabilities and the consequences of her betrayal. She had expected my independence to result in financial instability and professional isolation, but instead witnessed my income increase by 40% while my stress levels decreased dramatically. The chronic illness she had viewed as a disqualifying weakness had actually enhanced my credibility with clients who needed systematic, reliable technical solutions. Her attempts to reconcile our marriage focused on practical concerns rather than acknowledgement of her fundamental misjudgment of my character and capability. Rebecca wanted to resume our previous relationship dynamic while ignoring her collaboration with Marcus and her assumption that diabetes made me incapable of strategic thinking. She proposed couples counseling and renewed commitment to our family, but never addressed her willingness to sacrifice my professional autonomy for financial security. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. Rebecca's documented collaboration with Marcus in undermining my business interests created clear grounds for dissolution based on irreconcilable differences. Our property division reflected the reality that my independent practice had become more valuable than our joint assets, while her marketing career remained dependent on the corporate employment she had prioritized over our partnership. Tyler and Sophie adapted to our new family structure with the resilience that teenagers often demonstrate when adult conflicts finally resolve into clear boundaries. They divided their time between Rebecca's house in Maple Ridge and my new downtown apartment, which included a sophisticated home office, where they could observe their father managing both a successful business and a chronic medical condition without compromise or apology. Marcus's attempts to rebuild TechFlow Solutions with new technical staff and replacement clients proved futile without the intellectual property and industry relationships that had made our original partnership successful. Within 18 months, he was forced to close the business and seek employment with a larger consulting firm, working as a sales manager rather than a business owner. His campaign to marginalize me, based on medical concerns, had ultimately destroyed his own professional independence and financial security. The most satisfying vindication came 2 years later when Chen Technology Solutions was recognized by the Oregon Technology Association as the state's most innovative small business, specifically citing my systematic approach to complex problem-solving and comprehensive attention to client requirements. The award ceremony included a presentation about managing chronic illness while maintaining professional excellence, demonstrating that diabetes could enhance, rather than limit, strategic thinking and technical expertise. Standing on that stage, accepting recognition for achievements that Marcus and Rebecca had believed impossible, I reflected on the unexpected gift my diagnosis had provided. The medical condition they thought made me half dead had actually revealed which half of my life was worth preserving, and which relationships were based on genuine partnership rather than convenient dependency. My diabetes had taught me to monitor, measure, and optimize every aspect of my daily functioning. That systematic approach had transformed not just my health management, but my entire approach to business strategy, client relationships, and personal decision-making. The chronic illness that others viewed as limitation had become my competitive advantage in industries that valued precision, reliability, and comprehensive planning. The people who counted me out because of my medical condition had underestimated the power of someone who had learned to thrive despite systematic challenges. They thought chronic illness made me vulnerable and dependent. Instead, it had made me methodical, determined, and absolutely clear about my own worth. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.